The aim of edition 2 of the conference held in 2018 was in making an effort to articulate what formulates, as we understand it, the core spirit or identity of a dance form, Bharatanatyam or otherwise. This overwhelming but essential question will remain our topic of exploration going into edition 3 in 2019. A substantial part of the Padam-Javali collection of literature has come to be an inseparable part of the Margam repertoire that we today continue to adhere to. It is a unique body of dance literature that my generation of urban-bred dancers have become serendipitous inheritors of, while being completely removed from its cultural context and origins. Personally, for me, this body of literature has been one of the most fascinating areas that I was led into by my guru while exploring and understanding the craft of Abhinaya. Yet, as a generation, we have been unable to build on this collection in any way, with the art of writing poetry for dance, poetry that allows a dancer to step in with a rich layer of imagination of her own, being largely lost to us. Through the conversations in this conference, we hope to take a step towards rediscovering this art of writing for dance and what it entails. And we hope this exercise will be one that is extremely valuable and relevant in the contemporary world of dance. It is an absolute honor today for us to have amidst us veteran scholar, author, translator, Professor Velcheru Narayana Rao. For many of us dancers, particularly, who have extensively read and referred to books authored by him and several of his translations, he needs no introduction at all. We are extremely grateful to him for very graciously agreeing to be present, to present the keynote talk today on the form and syntax of Telugu Padams. I invite Professor Rao on stage.
I'm actually lost for words. Seeing all of you there, musicians, dancers, experts of music, and a whole lot of other qualifications which I don't have. I don't even know why I'm here. In fact, I always thought that very few people know me, but I realize that more people than I thought already knew me by name. That was sufficiently honoring me. Coming here to talk to you about dance or music is something I cannot do. But I just wanted to talk to you. What happened to this Padam? Started by Annamaya, continued all the way until recently now. I want to talk a little bit of history for you. Let me begin with a famous name you all heard many, many times, Krishna Deva Raya. Krishna Deva Raya never really, no, we don't know about that, but Krishna Deva Raya engaged a lot of poets in his court. Legends are that he has people who are called Ashtadiggajas, 8 great cardinal elephants. But that's only a legend. True, it's not true. There were no Ashtadiggajas. Only a couple of poets who we historically know that they were in his court. One was Peddana, the other was Timmana. Peddana who wrote Manu Charitra, and Timmana who wrote. Now, why do legends have such a power? During Krishna Deva Raya's time, he was to be elevated to the status of a Kshatriya by Brahmins. He was not himself a Kshatriya. So he needed Brahmins to make him a Kshatriya. And he was described as one who was bearing the burden of the earth, taking it away from all the legendary carriers of the burden of the earth. You know the 8 elephants that carried the burden of the earth. You know the great snake, Adisesha, who carried the burden of the earth, and a whole lot of other things. Krishnadevaraya, according to the description by Peddana, he relieved the burden from all these ancient, powerful animals, and he had the burden of the earth on his shoulders. That was how he was described by Peddana, not only he, but his family members. That has changed by the time you have come to 17th century. 17th century, kings in South India, Nayakas as they're called, described themselves as God. Nayakas for God themselves. So, as God, when the king is God, you don't need a Brahmin to elevate him to a higher status than what he already is. The Brahmin was his servant. Something else happened at this time. That something else is God being the ultimate man. Women were closest to him. For the first time in the history of Telugu literature, you have women escort poets, because women can serve God better than anybody. Not just that. This was also the time when a lot of things happening in the economy of the area. Most income of the Nayaka kings was from trade in cash. Therefore, a lot of people were making money in their own lifetime. Generally, you needed to say, I belong to such and such a caste, such and such a family. My grandfather was a great man. He earned a lot of money, and we have a lot of land, and that was inherited by us, and I come from this major, respectable family. No. This was the time when a person could become wealthy in one's own lifetime. And to say, I am rich because I made money. That's a big change that happened in 17th century in South India. As a result of that big change, you have people who became wealthy in their own lifetime and did not need to depend on any kind of an ancestral properties. Something more happened. When money in cash becomes very important in society, a new group of people, we don't know exactly if they existed before they did, of course, but clearly we know these are the Vaishyas. Vaishyas who were very accomplished dancers, singers, poets, writers, and a whole lot of other things. These were the people who acquired significant respectability in society. Not just ordinary respectability. They were poets, they were dancers, they were singers, they were public. And as a result, Vaishya was a respectable woman. They wrote a number of what we now call padams. They wrote what we know, you know this particular book, particularly Muddu Palani, Radhika Santwanamu. But what happens to this? Suddenly, in 19th century, we have the introduction of the English education and European culture, and along with it comes the Victorian morality. So anything sexual, anything talked about by these Vaishyas is no, that's immoral. That could not be in public. So most of the padams became very difficult for people to accept. Annamaya wrote 3 times more Shringara poems than the Adhyatma poems. But the Shungara poems are not as many times danced or sung, whereas the Adhyatma poems have become very popular. 19th century and the printing press has made these things available to you in print. You are able to read them. That caused a lot of problems. And a lot of people decided that our girls cannot dance those poems. Our girls cannot sing those poems. These are not respectable poems or padams. I can give you in translation some of those poems that we have published in these two books. But most importantly, they were very difficult to dance because of the new morality, the new middle class, the new Victorianized middle class has acquired. Suddenly, there's a worry that sexuality is not to be accepted. Whereas in the 17th century, when I will come to those poems later on, poems that we know as Kshetraya poems have become they printed. Here I have something to say that might be a little bit surprising to you. Kshetraya did not exist. There's no person called Kshetraya. There's no poet called Kshetraya. He was invented in 19th century in order to take away the authorship from the Vaishyas, who were the composers of these padams. Vaishyas were dancing these padams, writing these padams, singing these padams and dancing them. They were not respectable. You cannot say they are the authors. They are poets. They are competent. One person with whose name a book is published is Radhika Santwanamu of Muddupalani. You know, I don't have to tell you what was the story of that book. When it was published, Veerasalingam thought it's a bad book. It could not be read. A woman cannot describe sexual descriptions of that kind, but a man can. So when Veerasalingam decided that book is a bad book, of all the people, another Vaishya, Bengaluru Nagaratnamma, came out and said, hey, this is a great book. I'm going to publish it. And she published it. And then there's a big dispute, and eventually people tried to agree that Muddupalani's book, Radhika Santwanamu, was a good poem after all. During that period, a number of good books were written. Tara Shashanka Vijayam, I don't have to keep on quoting those books to you, but they were all completely discouraged as bad books for the century. English educated, well informed, politically powerful, a person called C.R. Reddy, Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy. He wrote a book called Kavitva Tattva Vicharamu, and in that he summarily dismissed these books which have erotic descriptions in them. For some reason he hated sex, and any description of sex is something he did not like, and therefore the book has to be thrown out. So the great period of Telugu literature, 17th century, was described as Kshina Yugam. It's a decadent period. You can read those books. In those books, books were printed with a lot of dots in all those words which should be there. I have printed books where pages after pages are only dots, because those poems were not supposed to be printed, appear in print. So this was the situation that we have when we are dealing with what I am talking about, the person named as Kshetraya. What they did was, the Kshetraya was to be invented. He was called Kshetrajna to begin with. And then afterwards, he became Kshetraya. A new biography was invented for him. This new biography, popularized by Visa Parao, who edited Kshetraya poems, said that Kshetraya was in love with a courtesan, and she told him, no, go sing about God, not about me. and she got converted and then went on, became a bhakta, and went to number of temple kshetras and sang songs to all those gods. And you have a wonderfully written new biography of Kshetraya, which became very, very popular. Kshetraya is more real than you can imagine. But you would be surprised, Kshetraya never existed. He was invented. It was invented in 19th century. Before that, Vaishyas wrote those padams. They carried those padams with themselves. They had them in their homes. Manuscripts of Kshetraya padams were found with, now they are called Devadasis. Devadasis homes. They were edited, they were carefully published, but named after this great person called Kshetraya. And since women, particularly Devadasis, that's why they call themselves Devadasis, they went and served many gods and many temples. They sing for them, all of them. Because these women were singing for all these gods, it was believed that Kshetraya visited all those temples. And he was in many of the kshetras. Therefore, he was Kshetraya. Believe me, there's nobody like Kshetraya. A friend, a student, and herself a dancer, she wrote a wonderful paper showing how Kshetraya was invented. And you have in this new book, Economic and Social History, there's an article by Harshita Kamath. Harshita is a Telugu, coming from a Telugu family. She grew up in the United States, learned dance. She's a accomplished dancer. Now she's a professor of Telugu in Emory University, and she wrote a successful article proving step by step that Kshetraya never existed and he was invented. So now we can see how a new mode of morality, a new power came over us in the name of colonialism, and that has completely transformed not just Kshetraya himself, inventing Kshetraya himself, but by creating a new kind of a culture in our minds. We do not want those songs to be danced. If we do, we'll be very careful. As I told you, Annamaya wrote 3 times more Shringara poems, and only a third of them are Adhyatma poems. Adhyatmas are very popular. They are danced, they are sung, and all those things. But the Shringara poems, not all of them are danced. Very few of them, if at all. That's where we are. In addition to that, we have completely lost, as a result of the technology, an ability to appreciate dance and music directly as somebody is singing before us or dancing before us. I see dance when it's videographed on my computer. I see a song when it is sung on my computer or by something else. Direct appreciation of what was going on when a dancer is singing is almost always lost. That's why we always look for photographs, look for videos, look for cameras. And honestly, I hate technology. I do not want it. Everything is to be permanent, to be there. When somebody is really singing and dancing before you, you have a different kind of an experience. That different of an experience is completely lost now. And I have Subbalakshmi singing. I have a record of it. I can stop her any moment I don't want to listen to her. I can break that poem immediately and quickly and go on further, which I could not do if Subbalakshmi was singing in front of me, sitting in an audience. That experience, of direct experience of poetry, is completely lost. We lost the experience of dance. We lost the experience of poetry. We lost the connectivity, the totality of what a poem gives to us. And therefore, technology is ruling us. Technology is communicating with us, not the person who is dancing, not the person who is singing. In those situations, to read these poems in translation is a bit of a problem. To read these poems in original language would be wonderful. I wish I could speak to you in Tamil. I wish I could speak to you in Telugu. But English is not the language in wanted really use. Here is a question. What happened? Somehow we were told that these languages are Dravidian languages. Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and Kannada, these are Dravidian languages. Therefore, they come from a different family. The other languages are North Indian languages. They're Aryan languages, Indo-Aryan. So they come from a different family. Who told us this thing? Sir William Jones, whose imagination does not go far beyond Bible. He created this from the point reading Bible. Bible told him that Moses' 3 sons, and therefore they have to be different families. They spoke those languages. We were very, very unintelligent when we accepted that the families of languages in this way existed. No, they are one language. There's a great shared feature between one language and the other. Modern linguistic nationalism has hardened the boundaries between languages. I was in Madras, not now, some 50 years ago. That Madras is no more here. Then, if you spoke Tamil, I was able to understand it very easily. My vegetable seller spoke 5 languages. I spoke only one language. You know why? Because I was educated. She was not literate, and therefore she was able to communicate in all these languages very quickly. And if I was not literate, I would have probably learned these languages faster, because there is a lot of similarity in the cadence, in the move, in the way the sentences are expressed, and the emotional expressions that languages make. That we are lost. We have to come back and make these languages easily understandable, intelligible to each other. Forget about script. That's not the language, any more than photograph is not the person. Therefore, we have to come back to where people can dance in more than one language, people can sing in more than one language, people can speak in more than one language, and people can feel in more than one language. That's where we have got to go to. I did not expect you to make a speech before you. You know more than I do. I just want to tell you that this is what happened as a result of the influence of colonialism on us, and that's the one thing we have to somehow avoid and go back to a period where colonialism was not telling us what to do. We can go back. I do not want you to quote English translations of Annamaya. They are not really, they don't communicate to you as they should if they are actually in Telugu. But that's all we have here. That's the way you came to know, you have come to know about me. I never thought you would. But eventually, I was a bit surprised and overwhelmed when people said, we know you. I did not. I was expecting to be somewhere very quietly in my own place, not knowing many people. But suddenly I understand, yes, Annamaya communicated to you even in English. Kshetraya communicated to you even in English. English is several layers removed from what Annamaya wrote and what Kshetraya wrote. I'm using the word Kshetraya as a collective noun as the authors of all these poems, who are actually women. We one day will recognize that the Vaishyas are respectable. Vaishyas were the authors of these poems, and Vaishyas were the people who kept the culture alive for a long, long time. Until we said, these are whores, these are prostitutes, they should be banned and they should not dance. That's when the culture was destroyed. Let's get back. Respect the authors of Padams, who were actually women. Respect Annamaya, who wrote in both voices, a woman's voice and a male's voice. In a male voice, he was worried about his existence. He said, why am I here? All kinds of problems in my life. God help me. But in a woman's voice, he was very confident. The women in Annamaya's poems argue with God, fight with God, quarrel with God, tell God what to do, and even command him, as you heard a little while before. Why the difference? What was happening? In fact, to understand Annamaya's poems in a woman's voice, you have to become a woman. You have to feel like a woman. Think like a woman. Think is not the right word. Feel like a woman. That Annamaya achieved somehow. This is something you find in Annamaya's Padams, and something we can understand only when somebody is dancing Annamaya's padams. Why? Because in Annamaya, as well as in Kshetraya, you can see that the poem has a drama inside it. It moves, and in move, when one move to the other, something else happens. Annamaya was one who produced the Pallavi, and the Pallavi is the one that report again and again and again. We think we have the same words being repeated as Pallavi. No, they are the same words, but the meaning has changed. Meaning has changed from one pada, one charanam to the other. And you can see, I don't know if I really have a possibility of explaining to you, you can see, let me see if I have a, maybe I can do this for you. Okay. This is the Pallavi, but here is the charanam. And the Pallavi gets repeated here. And Pallavi becomes one sentence. And another Pallavi, another thing here, charanam, another Pallavi becomes another sentence. But each of these sentences, Pallavi does have the same meaning. You repeat the Pallavi here, but it requires a different meaning altogether. That meaning change is something we can't observe when you're reading a poem. When you listen to a dance, or watch a dance, you can see the meaning change. Sometimes the meaning is so dramatic that you say, even the words are the same, the poem has changed. That change is what you can observe when somebody is dancing. You have the text of the song before you, but the dancer has presented in her sattvika bhavas different meanings of that. That's only then you understand Annamaya as a Kshetraya have a whole drama built into this particular padam. Padam does not say the same. From one charana to the other, it has acquired a different meaning. And the Pallavi moving around and creating an atmosphere of sound around it changes within it. That's the greatness of both Annamaya and, I'm using the word again, Kshetraya, because he's a collective author in my mind, and the collective author is what happened. I really don't feel like reading any of the poems for you. I should not actually. Oh, okay. Do you have a computer here? Can we present it on the, at least you can see how things change. I created a whole PowerPoint. I didn't want to now use it.
Sir, could you read? Do you want to read from the books, sir?
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. No, this is not what I want. Okay, there it is, Padam in Telugu. You think it's going to be appearing on the screen?
No, sir.
No? Okay, never mind, that's better for me. Okay,
I'll make it bigger, sir.
yeah. It is Annamaya. It's not there on the screen for you, and therefore I can only read. Here is Annamaya. When I'm done being angry, then I'll make love. Right now, you should be glad I'm listening. When you flash that big smile, I smile back. It doesn't mean I'm not angry. You keep looking at me, so I look. It's not right to ignore the boss. Right now, you should be glad. You say something, and I answer. That doesn't mean it's a conversation. You call me to bed, I don't make a fuss. But unless I want it, it doesn't count as love. right now you should be glad. You hug me, I hug you back. You can see I'm still burning. I can't help it, God on the hill. I'm engulfed in your passion. Right now, you should be glad. See the move from right now, you should be glad. Towards the end, right now, you should be glad becomes right now, I should be glad. That change you can observe when somebody is dancing. That dance, the sattvika bhavas on the face change, even though the text of the Pallavi says, right now you should be glad. This kind of a change you can't see unless you see the padam being danced. And padam being read on the text is not going to make that kind of a sense to you. We tried to present in our afterword how to read a padam and how the Pallavi changes from time to time and how another meaning comes at the end. Let me see if there is something else I can do. This is something that I did not see anybody dancing. It's not one of those songs that are considered respectable. You're too shy to tell. You have your period. We don't know where it will all lead. You hold your cheeks in your hand and giggle because your man looks at you. If he comes and touches you in those places, what will you do? We don't know where this all leads. You cross your legs and bend your head, thrilled that he calls you to bed. If he comes and close to you, twines your hand in hand, won't you go along? We don't know where all this will lead. You're bathing with wild pleasure because in the God on the hill has touched you. Now he makes love to you with passion. Tell me what happened to the taboo. We don't know where this all will lead. See the moves, what happens, what will all lead, how it changes towards the end, and ultimately the poem becomes completely different from what it began with. That kind of a change within the poem itself, from Pallavi to Pallavi, when it's repeated again and again, it's the same words that are repeated, but the meaning changes. Towards the end, it becomes completely different. This is the move that Annamaya was greatly capable of. Same thing you find in Kshetraya too. Let me see if I can find. Okay. Unfortunately, many of the Sringara songs, as I told you already before, have not become as popular as they should be. But here are the Jatma poems that become a lot more popular. It's a poem which probably you remember. You say you want to bathe when the waves subside. Is there an end to the endless mind? Kadaludipi, Niradaga Talasu Varalaku. That's the poem. You say, let me quench my thirst, and then I'll find the truth. Why should the thirst be quenched, and how can you know the truth? Is there an end? You say, after I know what lies ahead, I'll forget what was before. Can you know what lies ahead? How can you forget what was before? Is there an end? That goodness that comes from knowing how to reach God, how would you find it in your wildest dreams? Is there an end? This is a fairly popular poem. I do not know how many times I heard it. I didn't see it danced, but I heard it sung. There are many like this. poems which are more religious are often presented to you, and you hear them again and again and again, to the extent they are called bhakti poems. I think the word bhakti needs to be revised. Bhakti is not simply spiritual, and somehow physical and spiritual are not two separate things. Bhakti is also physical. Bhakti is also bodily. And therefore, to divide these things and say they're different worlds is not right. Everything goes together. Body is part of the poem, and you can't unpack the poem and break it up and say, this is the body and these are the thoughts. All comes together. I don't have to repeat that. You heard that already before. A poem is a totality. Poem cannot be experienced in pieces. You can't analyze it to breaking it to divisions. What are the ideas of the poem? Ideas are not poems. But the words of the poem, words are not poems. What are the texture of the poem? That's not the poem. There's a totality of an experience which comes by listening to it without analyzing it. Analyzing is a poem is to killing a poem. To listen to it, see it, watch it, smell it, and that's where the poem exists. And that's where Annamaya and Kshetraya exist. Kshetraya is a collective name. I have to repeat this again and again. Women wrote these songs. They are the Devadasis. They are the dancers. They are the poets. They are the singers. They are the people who carried the culture and brought it to us, and we destroyed it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You have a comment or a question?
Sir, I am of Madras. I have been exposed to Sanivaru, Devadasis of Andhra and Madras from childhood. In these two books, I find something which I cannot understand. In the sense, I have passed SLC, failed intermediate, so my education is not very high. In this, when God is customer, you mention, it is mentioned, I don't know whether you did it or Ramanujan or David Shulman. Mandhara is the mountain lifted by Krishna to protect cows and cowherds. I am under the impression Mandhara is the mountain supported by Kurmavatara, and Krishna mountain, the lifted mountain was Govardhana. How do you explain that? That is one.
That was a mistake.
Okay. Another one, in this, Manche Dinamunede, the Telugu text says, Ponchi Chuchutelane Polatiro Muvagopaludu. That refers to Muvagopala, the man. Here it says it refers to a woman who is pouncing, crouching and looking at him. It doesn't fit the prosody, not the prosody, the meaning at all in Manchi Dinamunede.
I don't remember the song.
Huh?
I don't remember the song from this end, and I don't exactly know what you are referring to.
1 minute. I will read it for you.
Okay. Yeah. That's Annamaya? Is Kshetraya or Annamaya?
Is by Muvanallur Sabhapati. Some people say it is Kshetraya. By prosody, it is not, according to me.
What's the name? Manchi Dinamu Nede? It's in the God on the hill, or when God is a customer?
92.
When God is a customer. Okay.
Today is a good day.
Yeah.
Let him come like a prince.
No, one second.
Manchi Dinamunede Maharajuga Rammanave.
Okay.
The Anupallavi is Ponchi Chu. Page 92.
Page 92, when God is a customer?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The second line in Telugu, Ponchi Chuchu Telane Polatiro Muvagopaludu. Meaning, let him come right royally without peering at what is happening in my house. In the English translation, it says, maybe that woman has been watching Mogogopala. That is not allowed by the Telugu text at all.
I don't quite understand what the Telugu, I don't have the Telugu text here.
Okay.
I only have the translation.
The Telugu text.
But let me make a comment to you. Translation should not be taken as things that will lead you to the original by themselves. If you know the original, depend on the original, throw the translation out. Okay, if you know the original, why do you need translation? And translations do not always convey everything exactly as you expect them to convey. There is always a difference between what you think you are translating and what you are translating into. The language does not allow you exactly the same thing every time. And we do not exactly stand by this translation to give you the total meaning of the text. That's what I was telling you there. We do not need translations. We can read the originals. Please read the originals and throw the translation out. It's for those people who do not know any language related to England, and we tried our best to produce it. And I don't say they're faultless. They're totally wonderful. You can do a better translation. Please do. Thank you.
Okay, I am now referring to God on the Hill, wheelchair Narayan Rao and David Shulman.
Uh-huh.
It's about Palukku Thenela Thalli,
Palukku Thenala Thalli. 1 second. What's the page?
page 16.
Okay.
The original says, Mutyala Malagupai Pavalinchanu, which means she is lying on the pearl-studded bedstead.
1
The
second.
translation says, she is lying on her side, pearls on her thighs.
So what's the problem?
Mutyala Malagupai Pavalinchanu is not lying with pearls on her thighs. It means she is lying on a bedstead studded with pearls.
Perfect. It's
You agree?
perfectly okay. You can say that, but it doesn't work well in English, and therefore we don't use that. What we are writing here is what should work well in English, not for you. You know Telugu perfectly well. Go ahead, take care of that.
What does pearls on her thighs mean?
Rao
It
Tata?
has no meaning at all.
It does. I'm not saying that. But there is a particular language that literary language, literary poetry accepts. And we try to make it read like and sing like and show like a poem in English. Okay? So we don't want to be always literal. By doing it literally, we kill the poem. We don't want to do that. And therefore we made choices. We made sometimes difficult choices. Choices which are not really acceptable even to us, literally speaking. But we are not producing a literal translation. We are producing a poetic translation. It should read like a poem in English. And somebody who knows how a read like poem in English should test it. And it's meant for audience who do not know Indian languages. It's not meant for you expert. People like you who are experts in both Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and many other languages. So please allow us the freedom we took to present it in the best way we could to make it a read like a poem. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Rao Tata. We have time maybe for a couple of more questions. Please keep it short.
Yeah, sure. Sir, thank you for blowing my mind away, at least, with your presentation. So I'm just curious to know, what do we refer to these padams going forward? Do we still call them Kshetrayas padams, or do you have a recommendation for?
I didn't hear you well.
No, I was asking you, what do we refer to these padams as going forward, if not Kshetraya padams? I said thank you for blowing my mind away, because some of the things that you presented.
I didn't quite understand what you
What he's
She'll
asking you,
translate.
what
She'll
can we
translate.
refer to the padams as going forward, if not as Kshetraya padams? Since you mentioned Kshetraya was a collective noun.
Yeah,
it may not
right.
have been a-
So what's the problem?
Do we continue to call it Kshetraya
We
padams?
have to, because it's the only name available. We do not know the names of all the women who wrote these songs. And therefore, use Kshetraya, but remember the authors of these poems are women. Authors of these poems are Vaishyas. We don't know their names. That's why we use the collective word Kshetraya, knowing full well that it was an invented author by people who did not like women to write poems. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other comments or questions from the audience?
Sir, as you've enumerated the history of the Padam in a very lucid way, one of the questions which crops up is, the Alapaka Kavalu, all the entire lineage, when they created their own padas, and we also see parallelly the Dasa Kavis of the Kannada literature point, also creating their own padas, then when did the entire shift of the entire thing of only women picking up, and once again, I think there's a shift there, historically there's a shift. Men, silent women there, and suddenly an uproar of women, Sanivaru creating the entire corpus of literature, and suddenly falling back to a masculine name called Kshetraya. Can you enumerate this gender shift here? Why does suddenly there is a shift in the entire authorship towards women only at one particular range? That's what I understand of the lecture. There is a quietness in between of a male contributor to that particular genre, uproar of women, like Muthu Padani's huge contribution for that matter, and suddenly shifting it back. And interestingly, sir, we know in Tamil we have men contributors to Tamil Padam. Well, we are not very sure of women, people who created Tamil Padams for that matter. Can you throw a little light on the authorship, especially gender-based authorship?
I don't know if you followed the question, because the sound is not very clear when you are speaking from that end, but I do not know how to answer a question which I did not even hear clearly.
Sorry.
I was just asking you to comment on the gender shift in authorship. How did it come from the men becoming exclusively women and going back to...
Where did they go back?
It did not?
No, even now we don't
In
accept
terms
them.
of nomenclature, Kshetriya is ultimately, it was attributed to one male poet or
Right.
a male name.
Right.
So your comments on the gender shift.
Gender shift happened because we did not respect Vaishyas. We didn't move on to accept Vaishyas could write. We didn't think they were respectable poets, dancers and musicians. We just thought of them as whores. And once we thought of them as whores and denied them the ability to dance, they were completely thrown out of the community. At that time, you had to invent a man's name and say, this man Kshetraya. Not only that, we were talking only of spirituality, only of bhakti. Everything has to be described in the name of spiritual description. He was not talking about sex. He was talking about God. He was talking about Jivatma and Paramatma. These are the kinds of commentaries that were made on these poems and completely removed the poem from what it was before. We denied our body. We denied our physical experiences. We denied that these experiences are religious in themselves. There is no religious experience apart from that. And that was what the so-called Devadasis are telling in these poems. And we were not willing to accept it. We were not willing to accept that Devadasis could speak culturally and accept in an acceptable way. We threw them out of our culture. We denied them to dance. We called them whores. And they had to go and appeal to the court and say, we are God's servants. That's why the word Devadasi came. They were Vaishyas to begin with. And the word Vaishya lost its respectability. And they invented a word saying we are Devadasis. And that gave them at least some respectability before the court of law. And the court of law was speaking English. Court of law was speaking Manu. Court of law was not speaking these languages. And therefore, a whole new lie had to be invented, somehow to survive the court, somehow to go along. And at that time, meanwhile, something more interesting happened. As I told you, we invented a name, we invented a person who wrote these songs, and he was in love with a Devadasi. Devadasi taught him, no, don't love me, love God. And he went on singing for God, going from temple to temple to temple. And that's how we created a new biography and a new person. If anybody is interested in reading an article about it, read this in this Indian Economic and Social History Review. Harshita Kamath wrote a wonderful article called Kshetraya, the Making of a Telugu Poet. That article, I think more people should read. And then they would have a good understanding of how a new poet has been invented by people who had a reason to deny the Vaishyas. Not just that, Vaishyas themselves have sons. Sons have socially become very important. They denied their mothers for Vaishyas. They didn't want to accept their mothers for Vaishyas. So they came in first in the court to defend their caste, defend their respectability, and deny the status of a Vaishya. The word Vaishya has become a disrespectable word, equivalent to a whore. They were never. So this is a cultural shift that happened as a result of colonialism, as a result of our change in taste, as a result of our change in what we had been before and we have now become as a result of impact of colonialism. That's what we should really fight against. That where we say our poems are lost, our experience is lost, our collective understanding of what a poem should mean is lost, our ability to understand our own body is lost. That is there here. And we have to fight for that. So that's all the big thing I'm talking about. I'm not talking about small words, this word and that word into English. That's not. We are not defending every translation in every way. That's an attempt to bring these poems to a larger world, an attempt that had some success, and apparently there are a few failures are suggesting. I'm not defending the failures. I'm looking at what was the result of the ability of these poems to communicate to a larger world what our culture was. And that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. On that note, we will bring this first talk to an end. I would like to request Srimati Vasantalakshmi Narasimhachari to kindly come on stage to honor Professor Rao.
What's all this? We shouldn't do any of these things. That's not right.
ఎన్నో అపూర్వమైన విషయాలు God bless you. కుడకవా
This is a book I should read. Thanks. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of talking about this.
Thank you, sir. We're really grateful for your presence here this morning.